let you know a little bit about what Sandler training is. I'm not the only guy that does this stuff. I happen to be a part of a network around the world that promotes a methodology that has helped many, many people in the past become better versions of themselves, become more successful. We get pretty good positive reviews. I personally have a net promoter score that I've been pretty proud of since I've started, but that's not really relevant. What is relevant is what we're going to do today. We're going to have a little chat about, some of the beginning of the learning process. So our program and things that we engage with, whether we're engaging with a salesperson, a sales leader, or a company leader, you kind of start with being aware of situations that might be relevant, being aware of what's going on in the world and how patterns kind of do exist and how to identify some of those patterns, and then having some knowledge on how you should react to those patterns in a more successful manner. Skill and mastery, we're not going to be touching either one of those. Skill is having some real live practice at a technique and finding a way to implement it into your world. And mastery is having enough experience at something so that you can actually say that when you go into a situation, it's your instinct starts to do you a favor rather than starts to do you a harm. Often, if you think about yourself, we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. And what tends to happen is, anybody felt that, there's some areas where I can take care of these things fairly well, but every once in a while when I get into a situation, stress goes up. And when stress goes up, we tend to default back to some of our core kind of instincts that kind of create a quick response. I don't know if you've ever known, but your first two instincts are generally not the right thing to do. So when stress goes up and we start to respond to instincts, the first two instincts that we have are probably not the most effective way to deal with that situation. We have to kind of take back, find a way to, learn something and program our mind to be more adept at that situation in the moment. So if we want to have a good chat, welcome Constance, thanks for coming along. Let's have a quick chat here this morning, just participate. I'll try to make this as interactive as possible. It's really about what you want to hear. My goal today is to make this hour worth everybody's while. You came online, appreciate it. Jason, thanks for setting it up. If we want to have a good discussion, it's about a two-way, not just about me rambling on. So I'm going to ask you some questions and we're going to try to have a bit of discussion as to what's going on in the world. So I always like to start with, what is kind of some of the things that you're struggling with today? When we think about the world that we're in, what's some of the things that that you want to be able to attack, but you're not quite sure how to attack them? What kind of things have you seen with regards to this new pandemic that there's a right way to do it, but you're not quite sure how you're going to do it? What are the challenges that you're seeing? What's going on, and what are you feeling?
So I'll kick it off here, Clint. Just sort of building on our previous dialogue, is that I've sent, I would call it 3 trial balloons out to larger organizations here in Winnipeg with, to a contact who I'm familiar with and they're familiar with us, outlining the realities of, what are they doing? What is their plan for their workforce to return to work, and how can we help?
Right.
And so, just on a pure numbers perspective, again, tiny sample size, but sent it out to 3 individuals whom, I know and they know me, and I've only received 1 reply. And so, the struggle is, are the 2 out of the 3 not replying because, it's just not top of mind for them right now? Does it appear spammy? Is it just, quite frankly, too small? Do we need to send it out to 20, 100 people and then make a more concerted, review of whether the tactic worked the way we hoped it might work?
Right. But so of 3 people, you sent an email saying, hey, I'm thinking about, what are you going to do when you send people back to work, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about exactly that.
Okay.
You manage a much larger workforce. We've got 2 locations that are convenient, generally speaking, and proximal to where you're headquartered. We can help you for your workforce reentry if you need. Just curious to know, you know, what you're thinking, what your plans are, and if we can offer any assistance.
Okay. Very, very, it's how we feel we should do that because we want to be helpful in this time, but we also want to figure out a way to make those connections, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else want to share with me what's something that we're struggling with today? What's selling remotely? What's the challenge that you're seeing out there? I'm going to come back to yours, Jason.
Yeah, you bet.
So I'm just trying to think here about, I mean, of course, there are always challenges. I mean, sales, especially if we're talking from that perspective, is, let's see here. I don't have a specific point, but it's certain. I mean, as a small company yet, and still in growth mode, we haven't necessarily figured out the sales engine for our business. And even before the COVID, surprisingly, I mean, through these times, we got a bit of a spike actually of new requests, especially with remote work and some new variables that businesses are going through to work from home, especially like things, law firms and some clinics. These are essential. So, I mean, I think we need a lot of help. I think overall in the sales how to set up our sales engine. But we have been really, as a small business, working it out with word of mouth and referrals more than really, or just like a massive scale sales. So I don't know if that helps. So that's really our challenge, is to scale up our sales process.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Mahmoud. And that's so the two things that I heard was how to reach out to people to engage with them in an effective way, and second, it's interesting here, Mahmoud, that you got a spike, because when I'm talking to people, and because I'm part of a network of salespeople, and we have traditionally always taught content with regards to how to connect with people in conversation, how to connect with people in through various social medias now as well, and how to move your business forward. We've been seeing a lot of response out there. So when I call people, I see some people that have actually got that spike, and there's probably only 20% of those out there that are suddenly like, hang on a second, something's going in my direction. I got clients in medical industry. They're suddenly creating a new ventilator. They were focusing on sleep before. Now they're doing a ventilator. So they got some sort of spike, some sort of advantage to this situation, created a new opportunity, and they had an ability to respond, and they're growing, and they don't have time to do anything else because they actually got more hectic. We then have people at the other end of the line that I've run into a couple of people that literally just decided that I'm stopping. I can't do it. I have to lay everybody off. I'm going to put my head in the sand. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm just going to shut this down and hope that when the world returns to normal, I'll have somewhere to come to, right? And so you got those two extremes, but most kind of float more in the middle, which is kind of what I've heard from you two already, is, you're here. You would had a bit of a spike, but you're not maybe super confident that it's going to lead to longer term stuff, because this is just getting people adapted to this world. And Jason, you're like, well, now how do I engage with people on this future journey as the world is changing? And the reality is, actually, my next slide just kind of reinforces the idea that this is a temporary change. So this is a temporary thing that we're going through. And today's world is obviously so much different than it was 5-6 weeks ago, before we had this big, shift. And, unfortunately, we can't jump back in time, because there was a comfort zone. There was things that we knew. There was things that we had adapted to, that we could deal with, and we knew we had the right risk factors in place. But now the world's so different. We're like, wait, what's going to happen? And are we going to look at this shift as something that is just going to destroy us? Or is it going to be a shift that we can now say, hang on a second, where's my opportunity to place myself somewhere in the future that is going to set me up for success? So today is today, and we can't go backwards. And now we got to figure out, the reality is there's a lot of dollars stopped flowing today for most industries. It's good to see that you had a spike. but those dollars have stopped, and now we have to figure out, how do we get our economy back up and running, and how do I place myself for where it's going to be in the future? And I think there's some good opportunities in both your stories, the businesses that we're talking about, to make sure that you've got a plan to get from today to where you need to be in a really effective manner. So we worked on 3 pieces of a puzzle.
Yeah,
There's
so
3
just
pieces.
meant to, okay, never mind, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mahmoud. What did you want to ask?
Just wanted to clarify that, of course, we did have a small dip also from our previous customers. So things have changed rather, just to basically provide the full picture. It's not only a spike, also we had a dip from other sides of sales. But yeah, thanks.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. So it kind of, some went up, some went down. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So it changes, but yeah.
Okay. No, appreciate, and that's you never know how somebody's impacted by it. So when we talk about 3 pieces of the puzzle, one of the techniques at the bottom right corner is, how do we start conversations to recognize the situation that people are in, and how do we not jump to assumptions like I kind of just did with the first bit of information I got from Mahmoud. So our success triangle is all about which piece of this puzzle holds us back. Which piece of this puzzle do we have good competencies in, and have we already learned how to deal with situations? But if we don't have 3 things working in conjunction, then we generally are not going to succeed. So I'll tell you, before we took off from Winnipeg, before we shifted our life quite significantly, my wife and I worked for MTS. I worked in a corporate office. I went to work every day. I had years where I had some great success with that organization, and I had years where, the culture, the engagement, everything just kind of started to really slip downwards. And I found that, my attitude started to suffer. I no longer believed in the cause that I was working for. My attitude started to impact my behaviors. My behaviors started to mean I would go into work a little bit later. I would take a longer lunch break. I would take a longer break, and I would leave a little bit earlier. All of these things just started to kind of suddenly collapse because I no longer believed in the company and in the marketplace that I was working for. I had some faith in myself to have the skills and abilities to do it, but I didn't believe in my cause. I didn't believe in what was going on. So my attitude impacted my behavior. My behavior means, well, there's no point in doing anything. I'm not going to do it. And I didn't learn anything new either. I stopped learning. I stopped learning how to exceed. And I turned into someone that, was looked at as a, someone who could do a pretty good Excel spreadsheet, and everybody would come to me for help on that. But it was a one-trick pony kind of thing. So I went in the wrong direction on my success triangle, and I didn't realize what was happening. But if we want to turn this story around, we got to figure out, okay, where is the challenge that we're having today? Is it in our beliefs? Is it in our techniques? Or is it in our behaviors? So my techniques are, if someone tells me that the price is too expensive, how do I reply to that? If someone tells me that, if I want to reach out to people like you did, Jason, how do I engage them so that they come back to me? How do I get that conversation going to understand if they're qualified to be a client or if they're not qualified to be a client? How do I take the right steps to do the things to know whether I'm reaching the right people, or and be able to qualify whether they're going to be someone that I want to move forward or not? What do I believe about myself? What do I believe about my company? What do I believe about my marketplace? How well am I investing in my attitude? And do I believe that this shift that just happened to us is going to stop me or pause me? Or I do believe that the shift that just happened is going to give me a new opportunity to go to a brand new place. And so our beliefs are a big piece of the puzzle. I'm going to jump to that in a second, but behavior is the last piece of the puzzle. When we talk behavior, behavior means I'm doing the right thing at the right time. And that's a lot more challenging than it sounds. So behavior requires discipline, and it requires the ability to know, here's what I'm doing today. Here's how I'm going to hold myself accountable. Here's how I'm going to make sure I don't fall off the wagon, because it's all too easy to fall off the wagon when I'm sitting at home. I got my dog, I got my bike, I can go for a ride, and I can avoid the things that I need to do to build my successful business. So behavior is the third piece of the puzzle. And if I don't manage my behavior, if I don't have a plan in place to manage it, how do I know where I'm going to be in 6 months, 12 months, a year from now? How do I know if the vision of what I want to build, I'm going to be making progress to, or if I'm going to be making steps back from? My behavior is my measurement. So what kind of things are going through? We're going to talk about attitude for 1 second. Like, what kind of beliefs do we have with regards to how we reach out to people? What kind of beliefs do you have that, say, Jason, you did your trial, you did your three customer trial there, right? What was your thought when you were putting that together, just for a few people? What was your approach to that challenge? What did you expect to see from it? What did you think? The best question is, what do you think with regards to the fact that you only heard back from one and the other two didn't get back to you? There's a belief that we can dive into.
So I guess my belief was I wanted to open a dialogue. And so really it was just more of a temperature test to, one, see if someone on the other side would engage to say, you know what, we are planning and here's what we're thinking. In the 1 out of 3 responses that I did get, the response was, we're not even there yet. We're still, dealing with today, and we haven't had the opportunity to look at the future. Now, I think we're, so in one sense, I achieved my objective there, whereas I positioned launch early as a resource that they can, come to once they get to that planning stage. And then, my caution is on the 2 that didn't reply, is that, are they in the same position, or, did they find the outreach, offensive isn't the right word, but irrelevant.
Okay. But so those are some great things. And those types of feelings or responses are really easy to fall into, right? So we right away start to whether, I did this small trial. I wonder if these two people, if one said they weren't even there yet, they were kind enough to respond, and then these other two say they don't even have the time to respond, so that probably means they're in the same belief. And then we start to create a belief structure that impacts what we do in the future, right? So that belief structure is, you had a super small trial, but you did something, you put yourself out there, and maybe the results weren't exactly what you wanted. And then the judgment is, well, I guess that wasn't the right way of doing it. Now, I guess I shouldn't do that anymore. And then we won't do things anymore. And then when we don't do things, we don't take an action step, guess what? We get the results that we asked for in the beginning. We get the results that we believed we were going to get. So when we go through these small trials, the reality, Jason, is 3 people just isn't enough to even start to get that kind of feedback. But nonetheless, that starts to create a belief in our head about how should I move forward and how should I start to do things in order to be effective.
Well, that's precisely it. I mean, I sort of kept it small by design to say, okay, well, if we get 3 out of 3, in this case, we've got 1 out of 3, and we add, if we increase that list, so next thing we do is we send to 20. Okay, well, if we get response on 30%, that's not a bad response rate, in fact. And then we continue to go from there. So that was sort of my approach and thoughts to it. Connie, I know that you're on the phone. I'd like to engage you to learn what you've seen in the event side of your business related to all this.
Yeah, I can kind of speak to that. So the events world is it's a little different. A lot of it comes down to, in the sense of growing your business. A lot of it comes down to referrals, and how you make a name for yourself is involved in, you can't really, I guess you can pitch an idea, but a lot of it comes down to people want to see what you do. So that is styled shoots, getting together with vendors, creating something that kind of makes a bride think outside the box and want to book you and want to reach out. And then the other side of it is referrals and weddings that you've done for other clients. So this year, how it has started was great. And then this COVID hit and it has completely taken a dive. So every event has been canceled up until July now. And I am on a weekly call with all vendors in the wedding industry every week to discuss kind of how they're dealing with it. And right now it is fear-based, the entire events world. Vendors, everyone, mainly couples, it's a fear-based thing, and a lot of them are not wanting to postpone, but when it comes to a government mandate, which majority of vendors are, it kind of, or venues I should say, it kind of puts every planner at a halt, because it now, for the first time, we're used to being in a position of full control of your day, having a say when it comes to everything involved. And so for us right now, everything is at a complete halt, and we, or me personally, like I feel completely helpless because I can't even, the only thing that we can do right now is postpone your wedding day. And it's a lot of, don't cancel your day, postpone it till next year. We're here to help you figure it out. But a lot of it right now is fear driven. And so we can't do our jobs. Like no one can do their job properly. Photographers can't, like everything is at a halt. And so when it comes to selling yourself, like really right now, Instagram is the only thing I have. And even trying to keep that positive spin because there's so much negativity out there. Yes, it's a great thing. But at this point, if I'm exhausted from it. I'm talking to girlfriends who are in the industry as well. And it's like, we're constantly trying to come up with how to keep relevant during this time. And I think that is the biggest thing, is how do we stay relevant, and what can we do without being in the same room as one another? Because again, yes, I can do a styled shoot and shoot it from my home, but it's not going to give that effect that I want it to give. So and again, it's one of those, we could be doing everything we can right now, but because of that fear of everything going on, it like usually referrals and people inquiries are usually at this time starting to come in, and then it becomes hard to keep up. Like everyone is at a stop. There are no referrals, there are no inquiries. It's just, yeah, we'll have the conversation, but everything is so in the air. And that's the only thing I can tell people is I can't tell you what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis because everything is changing so quickly. So I'm going to give you an answer now that I'm going to have to go back on in a day or two, because now that's actually not the case and it's changed to this. So I think it's just like everyone, you're trying to find a path on where to go and what to tell people, but you're helpless.
Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you to be careful with that. You're helpless mindset. That's one of those things that hits our attitude that says, and I understand the reality that, events aren't happening this year. I understand that's a business that you're in, that is basically a shutdown scenario, right? There's no getting around that. And please don't take that comment as insensitive to that situation.
Oh, no. And it's a mindset that I'm trying to get out of, because I realize it's like I'm not helpless, but that sense of feeling helpless just because I can't control what a venue is going to tell me or what a couple is going to do. It's just, I would say on that side of things, like having that control taken from you, because again, you're in the position where you usually have all the control. So taking that away, no, I don't take offense to that at all, because it's everything. It's something that we're all struggling with. So it's something we're all trying to get out of that mindset, but it's hard to get out of that mindset.
Yeah. So, and I hear you're using your Instagram tool as best you can, but it's also kind of something tiring, right? So I used to be able to go to networking events. And for me, a networking event was something that I enjoyed doing because I was outside the house. I was doing something different and I enjoyed interacting with people.
Yeah.
Now I have to do phone calls. And, if you told me that, 2 years ago, my life would be about doing cold calls, I would have been like, no way, that's not possible. There's no way I'm ever going down that path. And yet this is a skill that I've developed over the past, within 2 years, to be honest, in order to be successful at the company that I'm starting. So how do I have to shift and go back to some behaviors that allow me to continue to be relevant in this time? And so obviously we've talked about this stuff. You talked about networking events, weddings, anything in person, any travel, any events, any lunch meetings, all shut down. How do I shift my activity from things that I used to do to things that I can do today to continue to either set myself up for the moment when the dollars start coming, or potentially even have a new client database that I can talk to today, that when they're ready to make the decision, I'll be in a better position, right? So now the challenge is not just saying, hey, people used to come to me to be their photographer because springtime and because everybody gets married and because the industry works this way. How do I shift my behavior to be more proactive?
Right.
There's two approaches to doing things. One is marketing is a very important and valuable thing to do, right? Marketing is, let's get our message out there. Let's share with people what it is that we can do. But there's a reality that marketing is what I'm going to call a passive activity. So a passive activity is where I don't have direct influence on the opportunity. I don't have direct influence in an engagement with somebody where my skills, abilities, techniques are going to help move them forward. Marketing is I push stuff out, and I do it. I push stuff out on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook Business. I use some marketing, but that's I push the message out to try to get people to come to me. But here's the reality: is when I'm pushing messages out, I do not have any sort of proactive activity where I'm connecting with somebody. When I talk about a sales behavior is being disciplined to do the push out yourself and take control of those events. And take control of those events in a intelligent, structured manner so that you can move people through your sales gates. So your sales gates are the steps that you take in order to go from somebody not knowing anything about you to somebody being a client when they're qualified. And so now I have to shift my behavior. And what are the new tools that I have to use? We're on Zoom, right? We're going to use Zoom or video conferencing. We're going to do those types of things. So think about your business. What are the opportunities for you to try to do something different through some of the new behaviors, whether it's social selling? Social selling, like I talked about, is the ability to put out messages, but now engage with the people that are responding to your messages. Social selling is not just social media. Social media is, hey, look at me, here's all the stuff I do. Social selling is, I got a reaction from somebody. Now, what are the steps that I take to take that person from reacting to a post to getting them into my first sales gate, to getting them into being a qualified prospect, to understanding if they're a qualified prospect, and ultimately moving them forward. So what are the skills that I have today that I need to build on in order to make these things a reality?
Right.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, relevant or not, I think there's an idea here where, what I heard early on you say is that you're on the leading edge with, the real-time information of your industry. And I would tell you that there's a market out there who haven't hired an event planner. So the do-it-yourselfers, they're in the dark right now. Mm-hmm. And I would tell you that you offer significant value to that group at this stage in the game.
Yeah.
And then also the folks who maybe hired someone and they're not participating in the calls that you are. And it could be worthy of a quick reach out to say, hey, I'm, real time with what's going on. And it would seem that, the earlier someone gets in line is the ones who are going to, get their events off without a hitch. So again, just an idea that might be able to speak to this whole idea of, you're helpless in some cases, but I think there's also opportunity here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what we're all like. Again, I have like everyone, and it's funny because it's not cliques, but there are definitely cliques within the industry. So I guess I'm in my own little clique with who I usually like my go-tos. So we're all trying to come together and figure out, how do we collaborate on something together and sell it as that? Do we, and that's kind of what a lot of people, and of course I'm like, and the funny thing is I've been in the industry for, it was almost four years, and then you break out on your own and it's like, okay, well, no one knows who the hell you are anymore, but you've been doing this and you have the skills and the knowledge, but now you're working on selling yourself and what you do and how you're different. And so it's like all of that combined with this, it's like, oh dear God, like I picked the worst year to open a business.
So Connie, how do you identify the triggers for who might be a prospect? So now there's a little bit of science that gets to be done on, okay, here are the trigger behaviors for who might be a prospect for me. Mm-hmm. And, I look at trigger behaviors as in, somebody just hired a new salesperson. Somebody just hired a new sales VP. Those are trigger behaviors in companies that I look to say, hey, somebody hired somebody over there. What's that person's plan to enable them to be really good at selling? And so you have to identify what your triggers are. Like somebody's buying a house. So you take a step back from the opportunity of thinking that it's just about they've gotten engaged and they're about to get married, to rather, what are the things that are happening before in their life, and start to figure out how to proactively reach those people with a quick conversation so that you're first in mind when they come down to place and make that decision.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of like without anyone reaching out or inquiring, that's kind of, it's always, you kind of get a base for what that trigger would be within the email that they send to you. So that it's usually, it's kind of a tough it's a tough call on where the triggers come from right now, or for me, I'm still in the process of figuring that out. And I guess this time it kind of lets me sit down and kind of go with a game plan of how to approach everything. But again, the one thing that is just a lot of collaboration, because I think people are looking for, they do want that positive attitude, and they do want to see that, you know, we're not giving up and that we're all pushing forward and we're going to push through this, and that, you know, your day is going to happen regardless of what today is like. It's going to be a year later, and that's it. That's the harsh reality of it. And we feel for all the couples that have had to push. But again, the big selling point is we're all trying to say, you know, like, don't cancel, please do not cancel.
Right. So there's a thing. I just shared my screen. I'm going to kind of go through a little script that happens. And, you know, when we think about, you know, buyers, so can you see my screen?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. There's a program that's in play that typically happens over and over again, and we're not usually quite aware of the fact that this is going on, but there's a routine that has basically been created, you know, ever since somebody ever tried to sell anybody something. And it goes like this. As a seller, when we first go out and chat to somebody, what is it that we're trying to do? What did you just share with me, Connie? What is your first kind of instinct when you want to reach somebody who wants to buy something? What are you doing as a seller?
I'm trying to sell myself, I guess, and my services, and this is how I'm unique from anyone else that you're going to talk to, or any other planner.
Sell self, generate interest in what it is that you can do, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When you're a buyer and you walk in to buy a service, what kind of product, service, or, you know, just think of something you've had to buy recently that actually engaged more than that you realized was a little bit more complex than ordering something off of Amazon. What kind of thing have you had to buy recently?
Oh, Jesus, that's a great question. Oh my God. I don't usually buy a lot of things. This is horrible. I guess we like, the last big thing that I had to purchase was my cell phone, and that was a year ago. But making that switch to something was, I guess, there were certain things that I didn't even anticipate when I walked in. So I guess we could go with the cell phone. It's the only thing I could think of that I've had to purchase other than a home, but that was a whole other story. So
all right. So when you bought that cell phone, did you go into a store? Did you talk to somebody?
I did, yes. And my thing is, I'm horrible at, like, I did have a sales job, and my whole thing is, there is a way to sell, and I'm just not a seller, because it's like, I don't want to pressure someone or force someone into buying something. And if they're not interested, they're not going to buy it. And then being the buyer, if I'm not interested in something, yeah, I might be looking, but I'm not going to buy it. So when someone tries to force that on me, it completely turns me off. So I usually bring my husband, because he's so good at shutting people down or negotiating or calling bullshit. Whereas your husband,
your husband comes in, and you come in and you're going into that thing. And as a buyer, when you have to talk to somebody, we have some sort of, you know what, it's when you're about to talk about buying that phone and you need to get somebody's expertise to help you do it, what do we know about that person, and what do we think about that person?
The person who's selling it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, unfortunately, my immediate thing is, okay, how are you going to try to upsell me on something that I don't need? Which is a horrible first thought.
No, but that's not a horrible first thought, because that's the normal first thought.
Yeah.
That's not something that's unique to you. That's unique to, that's like just about everybody walks into something.
Yeah,
and when we don't know somebody, we don't trust them. And if we don't trust somebody, we're not going to have an open conversation with them.
Exactly.
Fair?
Like, how are you going to take advantage of me now?
Right. And so when we're talking about how are you going to take advantage of with me, are you, when you're having that discussion, are you volunteering, hey, here's exactly what I know I need. Here's exactly what I know I like. Here's exactly what I'm willing to pay. Here's exactly when I need to have it. Are all those things openly just flowing out of your mouth when you know that you've got some fear about this person trying to take advantage of you?
For the most part, yeah, because like I usually, if it is something like a phone or TV or whatever, I usually do, or even a car, for instance, I'll do a fair bit of research to kind of what I'm wanting, and I'll kind of go in with, this is what I need, this is what I've looked at, this is what I'm thinking. So but you're the expert kind of thing. So that I kind of put trust into them. And I guess that's where sometimes I, put my foot in my mouth, but I'm coming to you for a reason because you're knowledgeable, but for certain things I know going into it that they're going to try to put a twist on it,
right,
or a spin on it, that I might not expect. And sometimes I don't know how to handle that situation. Hence my husband comes with me.
Okay.
So
you have a scenario where I understand you do try to put trust in people. You do try to do that, but at the same time, there's this script running in your head where you don't really know what their intent
right.
is.
Yeah.
You don't really know if they're just going to offer you, hey, as the expert, are you just going to offer me the thing that gets you the biggest commission? Or are you going to offer me the thing that's right for me?
Yeah. Like, do you give a shit or do you just want the money kind of thing, essentially? Yeah, absolutely.
So the reality is we withhold some information. As a buyer, when we walk in to buy a couch at a furniture store, that person comes up to us. What's our first? They come up to us and they're probably an okay person, but they come up to us and say, hey, how can I help you? And what do we do?
Oh, back off.
Back off. Let me be. I'm going to go figure this out. I don't need you to push me into something, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we do. So as a seller, we just continue to try to offer all this great information. We try to offer all this great insight. We try to offer how we can be helpful and we can be good. And we do this. And then after we've had a number of ask a bunch of open-ended questions, ask what kind of thing they might have. We've been coached on how to do this. It's not new. Right. But we ask some questions and we do some investigation, and then we suddenly tend to come to this place where, hey, here's all the things that I can do for you because, hey, I can take care of those employees when they go back to work. Hey, I can get that right picture for you because I know how to create an emotion in an image, right? I can do all that stuff, and we sell and we sell and we say, okay, here's the proposal. Here's what it's going to cost for you to do it. I'm going to give you this proposal because after we've had a good discussion back and forth, we got to a place where I can confidently say, hey, here's what that is going to cost you to get done. Here's the terms, here's the delivery stuff, all this information. Fair?
Right. Yeah.
I'm being simplistic, but fair?
No, and it's the same thing when it comes to someone talking to me about my services. And again, I've been in it long enough where I'm at the point I'm not going to devalue myself because I know what I'm worth. But it comes to and the wedding show is it's a good slap in the face to see what's out there. But again, it's one of your best selling tools. It's one of your best selling shows. But it's usually it's met with a lot of openness, but at the same time, you can kind of see the wheels turning. And I'm like, well, no, I'd be the same way. I'm in that position. But again, I'm realistic and I know that things cost and that there are certain things that are going to cost more than I'm expecting. Right. But,
Connie, I'm sorry, we're going to run out of time here at the top of the hour. I'm going to try to get through something just so we can go forward. Is that okay?
Oh, totally. I could talk forever. So just tell me to shut up.
Sorry about that. So when we do that proposal, we give them all that information. When we give them that information, then what happens? They take the information, and what do we typically do when we have somebody's quote? So they have you as a photographer. They have you as a place that they can go put their employees. They go and check some other things, right?
Yeah.
As a buyer, I'm going to go and I'm going to take that information because I don't know the information that you have, and I want to be educated. A buyer always wants to be educated. So then I'm going to, take your quote, take your information and use it the way I want to use it. I want to be in control as a buyer of this selling engagement. That's just how we want to do it. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to shop it. So as a seller, now I get to this place where I'm like, okay, well, I've proposed something, they've taken it and shopping it. And then what's the rule of sellers? What do you have to do before you can get a sale? What do we have to do? What's the rule? You don't get a sale unless you
ask for it.
Ask for the sale. I got to ask for the sale. There's 50 ways to leave a lover. There's more than that ways to ask for a sale, but you got to ask, right? So rule is, as a seller, I got to go ask for that sale. And if I ask for the sale, then I get into this game where, well, what typically happens now we have this scenario where somebody's taken your information, they've gone out and shopped it, and they get to go do a bunch of work. And they'll you'll call them up and they'll say, hey, I love the fact that you're doing this. I think you got a great opportunity here, but I'm not quite sure. I got to talk, I'm not quite sure that this piece of the puzzle is quite right for me. I'm not quite sure that I still got to go have some discussions with somebody else about here's how I'm going to do this thing and here's how I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to go do these things and have that discussion. So we end up in this, it's called the objection game. So when you end up with objections, now you got to know how to overcome objections. And now you got to play this game where, hey, they say this, I say that. They say this, I say that. They say this, I say that. and it's tiring, and you never know when it's going to end. And they get all this information, they shop it, they tell you how great you are. Have you ever had someone tell you how great this opportunity was, how perfect your shop looked, Jason, and then suddenly they were nowhere to be found?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So people give us this feedback that sounds like they're trying to give us the right feedback, that they're qualified. They give us this feedback because they've been trained to do it, because maybe they're not being misleading intentionally, but they haven't necessarily truly thought out all the things that they need to think out before they can give you that feedback. So their feedback becomes, it's false praise. If someone tells me how wonderful I am and how they're going to put 2 or 3 people in my room, I say, thanks, but I'm not sure that their situation is the same as yours. So help me understand why you would do that. I'll never get ahead of a buyer, because when we get ahead of the buyer will disappear. The buyer takes the information, they shop it, they do that, and they basically, you know what they do? They tell you lies that they don't even mean to tell you. They accidentally tell you these things. So they tell you these lies, and then you go, well, that kind of sucks. Now I don't know how I'm going to go about and qualify the next person, because I went through this game back and forth. Now you absolutely do get some business when this happens, but when it goes wrong, this is the kind of route that kind of tends to go happen. So after I've asked them, and after they've given me these lies, what game am I in as a salesperson? What do sales managers love to tell people to do?
Follow up.
Follow up. And now I'm in the follow-up game. And what did the buyer do? They went out, they somehow got engaged with a mob, they witnessed a murder, and now they're in the witness protection program, and you can't even get a hold of them. That's what tends to happen. So this weird thing happens where they go into hide, where they can't even find them. So these patterns exist, and you can almost take every buyer-seller interaction. You can take a buyer-seller interaction where somebody's applying for a job and somebody's offering the job. As I'm the buyer for the person offering a job, and I'm the seller for the person trying to get the job. You can take different interactions in the world and think about how this pattern tends to play out. And we're always trying to be proactive in saying, hey, I'm a great, nice person, and the more I give you, the more you'll give me, the better chance I have to play the game, because the more I do, the better it's going to be. But here's the problem. What does that mean to you with regards to who you're talking to? How many times are you investing your time in the wrong person? How many times are you wasting your day trying to qualify somebody that's never going to buy? How many times are you giving away your trade secrets about what it costs to do business with you when you're just allowing them to choose which way they're going to go, when you're hoping for a result? I got a bottle of what I call hopium. It sits on my desk. First day sweet, next day sour. First day, they tell you how wonderful you are and you think you got a sale. The next day, they disappeared. So you take a shot of hopium because you're hoping for the business. So we have to stop those routines. Those routines don't help us. Those routines hurt us in the long time because they waste our time. They waste our resources. And if you identify the pattern, then you can change the route forward. And there's, I kind of ran out of time here this morning, but there's 5 things you do to sell to anybody. There's 5 things. 5 things you do before. 1, you gotta do something disarmingly honest in order to create an impact on them. You gotta do something that creates a different type of engagement with people, because if they don't know you, they don't trust you, and they're not really gonna buy something complex from you if they don't have some trust in you. So you have to change the pattern of how you engage with people and stop doing things that are so common, it's painful. Think about something like how you start a conversation. If you're in the mood of starting a conversation with, hey, how are you? Guess what? Everybody starts every conversation ever with, hi, how are you doing today? It's the most overused, underappreciated sentimental sentence ever. Stop. Just don't do it. It is genuine, but it's so overused. The discussion that they have is a wired routine in their head, and they won't actually be engaging in the conversation, even if you feel it's genuine. So don't do things that are common. Do something else that's disarmingly honest. Change the pattern. Create ground rules for a conversation. So a ground rule is an upfront contract. How do you set up a clear progression with somebody you're prospecting on what the next step is going to be and what the fair rules are of engagement? You can't blame somebody for doing something you didn't tell them they couldn't do. So when we go through that traditional selling game and we have some of these feelings that come back to us and say, hey, I'm not sure that I can actually, move forward effectively anymore. It's because we enabled that relationship to happen. When we set ourselves up in this traditional buyer-seller model, if you think about the buyer and seller, and you think about two people that are on some sort of plane of collaborative respect, mutually understanding each other, who do you think has a superior position in that relationship? The buyer or the seller?
Typically the buyer.
The buyer. So the buyer gets to have this relationship where they're sitting up here, and us as sellers end up wanting and to please and wanting to get that relationship. We want to be the person. And if you don't have a mutually respectful relationship with somebody, how's that relationship likely to progress later on? Mm-hmm. So if we start with ground rules, if we start with a habit of creating an engagement that says, hey, here's how things work, and here's how we operate. And if you break the rules of engagement, well, you broke the rules of engagement, not me. You're not worth my time. I have other people to talk to. If you start to respect yourself more than that traditional engagement, you start to get better people that you're engaging with because you can move them forward better. So that's ground rules. How do you set a ground rules? I would share one, but I'm out of time. And then there's 5 things to do to sell to anybody. Then there's 5 things. Understand their pain, but it's not just the pain of what business solution you can offer. It's not just, hey, here's how my product solves the thing that you're talking about. The true reason people buy is a little bit deeper. It's what is in it for them in order to be, what is the emotional commitment that they're going to have to wanting to do that? What does their world look like if they don't make this decision that's good for them? And if we as sellers have something we believe is valuable, we can dig into that pain, that true emotional pain, which is something that's personal to each person. It doesn't matter if you work for a company and you buy for your company. It doesn't matter if you're buying something for your own self-life. You're always selecting the thing that is helping you get away from the situation that you don't want to be in. And if we have conversations with people about getting them into that picture, about what happens when they don't do business with us, that means we ask the right questions and they become qualified quicker. It's not just them volunteering information. It's us having a conversation to get them to the point to realize that they need us, not just, hey, it's just somebody else out there that sells something. We have to get them to need us. That's a true qualified client. And we follow ethical selling standard. It's not ethical to sell something to somebody that they don't need. So if you're a good salesperson and you believe that it's not ethical to sell something to somebody they don't need, then you can walk away from it and you're not talking to the wrong person. Rule 2 is more difficult. Rule 2 in the ethical selling standards is it is unethical to not sell something to somebody that they do need. So rule 2 means you have to be good at your job. Rule 2 means you got to have the confidence, the guts, the commitment to go out and have the right discussions to allow people to see why it is they need to do business with you. That's rule 2. So that one means you have to have skill and technique and know how to do the right behaviors. That one makes life difficult. And then understand, get all budget issues on the table, figure out the decision-making process. When you know all of those things, then you share information about your solution. Then you share the pains that they have with the solution that you have and nothing else. Don't litter it with all the extra goodies that you get to have. Litter it, you do a proposal that meets their needs, and then you move on. And when you do that and you do a post-sell is, hey, what happens the second I walk out of here and your existing provider is going to offer you a 20% discount to save the business? How's that going to be handled? Set people up for the situation that they're about to be in so that you know they don't back out of the decision that they made. So if you know how to do 5 things, true pain, true understanding their emotional commitment, get all budget issues out on the table, get the decision makings out, know how to do a presentation, and know how to post-sell, then you can sell. But these are the new behaviors. The new behaviors are, we got to talk to people. The right people are the ones we talk to. The right people are the ones that get to actually engage with us because we have something valuable to offer and they respect us for it. I kind of totally missed my deck this morning, but I kept hearing that message, so I wanted to share that routine. I hope that was okay.
Yeah, you nailed it, Clint. I think
that was great. Yeah,
it was a great,
Thank you.
Inspirational talk. Is there a closing slide with some of your contact information, Clint, as I will post this on our YouTube channel for other members to digest at their convenience?
Yeah, so I'm going to slip to my other slide here just so we can put that back up. and you know, so much stuff that I didn't even talk to. So you got to do good email stuff, pre-call checklist, remote, how to ask the right questions for industry, how does it, blah, 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 blah. Let's go to the end. Oh, care model. Care model is huge. I really wish I'd spent a few moments on that. That's all about behavior. But if you see this, you know, what's one attitude behavior technique that you want to learn today that you can go out and apply? So I spent a little too much time telling the story about how it goes wrong and not enough giving you some tips on how to do it. But if you kindly would go to this link, ask.sandler.com/WLL, that will give you a, you know, an insight to what it is that you learned today, and give me some ideas if I hit the nail on the head or not. And so I'd really appreciate it if anybody that came into the webinar can do that. Webinar lesson learned, quick questions. My contact information is right here. Clint Tunner at Sandler.com. Anchor Sales Knowledge, 204-515-5445. You can find me on LinkedIn and a number of other places.
Clint, thank you so much for spending the time with us this morning. And I'm sure people will that view this or participated today will reach out to you with any questions, and let's keep the dialogue moving forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
Appreciate the time and have a great day. Good selling, everybody. Always ask permission and be respectful. You never know what situation people are in.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank
Clint.
you.